because happiness is something that you cannot control. You dated someone who didn't like your boundaries and said, oh, you're too difficult. And there you are judging yourself because of what they said, or social media has led you to think that, oh, there's something wrong with you because you want to do something different. You're too weird. The ability to look back at those things, I think, is really powerful. It could prove to yourself how much you've changed, which in fact proves how much you're capable of changing in the future, which I think is the antidote to a lot of us thinking that we're stuck in place and that our best days are behind us.
Case Kenny. He's not just a dude bro guy from Chicago, but a dynamic force in the realm of mindfulness and personal growth.
He's the mastermind behind the internationally acclaimed podcast, New Mindset, Who Dis, a platform that has seen over 8 million downloads and earned a slew of commendations, including a spot on Apple's Top 30 podcasts.
So the reason that I find myself confident to get up as a regular guy, not a therapist, not a licensed professional, and to encourage people to practice mindfulness is my job is to lead people to ask themselves certain questions and come up with their own answers. There's just you, what you've lived, and your ability to react to it in a way that honors, who you are and what you want. So my goal, the one thing I can control though, is to be proud of myself. I think to be happy, you have to be somewhat contrarian. You have to push back against a lot of the pressure that we're under.
Are you happy?
What is happy?
The Avenue of the Strongest is a podcast dedicated to exploring the lives and experiences of the most inspiring individuals from around the world. Each episode features interviews with fascinating guests who share their insights and wisdom on a variety of topics, including education, impact, motivation, health, and learning. Here are your hosts, Anayet Chowdhury and Vlad Suleiman.
This podcast is sponsored by ArgoPrep, an award-winning educational publisher serving over 1 million students nationwide. If you're a kindergarten to 8th grade teacher or principal, be sure to check out our supplementary workbooks to get your students ready for standardized state testing. We cover all subjects from kindergarten to 8th grade. Use the coupon code AVENUE for a 25% discount off of all purchase orders. Visit us today at argoprep.com/store. Okay, so welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It was a very kind intro. Thank you for that.
No, of course, I love the format of your social feeds. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's short quotes on Postit notes. Absolutely love it. Very aesthetically pleasing to look at. So many of your quotes inspire me. But I wanted to start off with a quote that kind of resonated with me a lot. It was just I kind of had to scroll very deep down, and this is something that I found, which is, if you knew me between the years of 2018 to 2020, allow me to reintroduce myself. I kind of want to start there because I think it's so important. What is that Postit? Sorry, let me reframe it this way. Since you wrote this, what does that Postit mean for you? What's the message behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for one, it's practically a reflection of how much I've changed, certainly, and also a reflection of how important I think change is in life. I think if you're not reinventing yourself in some way, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. And I think sometimes that's a bit of a contrarian view. I think a lot of times in life, we've had it kind of beaten into our psyche that, you got to pick something and you just got to grind it out forever. And I think there's some merit to that when it comes to business and talent and building things that require tens of thousands of hours of work. But I think when it comes to creating a life that makes you feel happy, at peace, and fulfilled, it requires change. It absolutely requires change. And I think embracing that is difficult to do because I think a lot of the times we see the topic of starting over as a reflection that we screwed up, that we're starting at zero. And I think a lot of what I do through mindfulness and journaling and book writing and everything is encouraging people to see the idea of starting over as a means to get closer to what will make you happy, fulfilled, and all these things that we're striving for. And I think that quote was just a cheeky way of saying that for me, diving into mindfulness, doing it every single day for 5 years has allowed me to evolve 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 10.0. And, I just really encourage people to see the value in their own life of change as a positive force, not as a reflection of failure, not as a reflection of falling behind. There's so many different ways that we get in our own way. And that's basically it. I think change is great. That's the 2 cents of it.
No, change is definitely great. And I so agree with that Post-it note that you've created, because it's funny because well, uh, I've been in the entrepreneurship space for 8, 9 years now, but I can tell you I'm at like version 15.0 right now
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe I was embarrassed with the 1.0 or 2.0 or 3.0. But yeah, it's important to note that, hey, you change, you can change in many different ways or completely. And so it's very important to recognize that change is good, change is great, change is okay.
Yeah.
But I want to ask, how did you first get interested in the personal mindfulness space and the personal development space?
Yeah, certainly I fell into it. And like, I've always been a bit cynical of the self help space, the self improvement space, because to me, it always felt a thing where it's like there's a right way and a wrong way. And self development teaches you the right way. Self development is the blueprint to being happy. And I think what I realized is, of course, that's not true. There's no right way to do anything in life. There's a million different ways to be happy single, happy in a relationship, happy at a job, happy as an entrepreneur. There's truly no right way for anything. And what I realized through starting to challenge myself to be more honest is I was practicing mindfulness. And mindfulness, I think, is very different from the idea of self-help. And certainly, I think anyone who offers themselves and their services and their expertise as a self-help leader is great. That's fantastic. I applaud anyone who makes an effort to help other people. But mindfulness really speaks to me because mindfulness is the practice of personally, on a one-to-one basis, finding out what works to you, for you, through honesty, through presence. There's no one answer. So the reason that I find myself confident to get up as a regular guy, not a therapist, not a licensed professional, and to encourage people to practice mindfulness is my job is to lead people to ask themselves certain questions and come up with their own answers. I'm not telling you an answer because, again, my answer might be different from your answer, and neither of us are right and neither of us are wrong. But mindfulness says that you can come up with your own conclusions based on your own life experience, and it requires radical honesty, judgment-free introspection, forgiveness, all of these things. But it's entirely personal. It's entirely up to you based on what you've experienced, based on your goals. And I find a lot of energy in that. I think there's a lot of peace that I find in knowing that, there's no one thing, there's no one timeline, there's no one supposed to be. There's just you, what you've lived, and your ability to react to it in a way that honors who you are and what you want. And this idea of mindfulness, all mindfulness is, right, it's in the word. Disappoint our English teachers and use the word to describe a word. It's to be mindful. Right? To be mindful is to be aware. To be aware is to be honest. And really, if you could be honest with yourself, you come up with answers that are true to you. It doesn't require you to borrow it from anyone else. And I think as someone in this space who has been fortunate to carve out a bit of influence for myself, I find a lot of privilege in being able to sit down and say, hey, you there, why don't you ask yourself this question through the lens of your experiences and then find an answer that's true to you? And I think that's a gift to be able to do that. And I think it's a gift for us as a group of people to be able to practice it for ourselves. And then, yeah, I mean, I think back to your first comments, practicing mindfulness helps you grow. And for me, I never had an inclination to get into this. I just realized how much it's helped me grow, truly. And it's something that you get better at, right? It's like a muscle. You talk about things like 10,000 hour rules and being an athlete and, taking 10,000 shots. It's the same thing. Ask yourself 10,000 questions and see how much you grow. It's a similar concept. It's a muscle that you can practice, that you get better at.
Hey there, before we dive back into the episode, I wanted to stop for just a brief moment and express our heartfelt gratitude.
Knowing that you've chosen to spend your time with us, to listen and engage with our content truly warms our hearts.
Every story we share, every topic we discuss is made much more meaningful if you are here with us on this journey.
If you found value in what you've heard so far and you're excited as we are about the episodes to come, we'd be so honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. It not only ensures you stay informed of all of our new content, but it also supports us in continuing to create and share. From all of us here, a sincere thank you.
Now, without further ado, let's get back to the episode.
So I know you talk a lot about journaling as well. So is that an important component of practicing mindfulness?
I think it's very important. I think I don't want to say essential, but for me, it's essential. And I also think it's a great entry point for people. I think a lot of the time, things like mindfulness and meditation, it could come off as a little either intimidating or silly or too sensitive or for other people, right? I used to kind of fall into that trope. I used to think, mindfulness, that's for people who use words like energy and frequency and chakras, and they've got crystals in their homes. And while certainly no disrespect to that, it's so much more practical than that. Mindfulness is literally just self-honesty and presence, mind and body in the same place. And journaling is a great entry point where you don't really know what to do, right? A lot of times it's like, I want to be a mindful person. I want to do what I say. I want to say honest things, but we don't really know how to get to that point. Journaling is great because it takes some of the guesswork out. You get a good journal by someone who has created good questions, and you just answer the questions. And it gives you momentum. And then you start coming up with your own questions. You start to develop what I call a journaler's mentality, which is when you're living and loving and working and doing all these things and you're not journaling, you're still maintaining that sense of honesty and judgment-free honesty. So I think journaling is great. It's a great entry point into practicing mindfulness. And then from there, you can go and start to do things like therapy and, all different kinds of things. But I think it's a great entry point because a lot of the guesswork has been taken out of the equation for you.
Are you journaling like on a daily basis or every other day, or is there some base guideline of how often we should be practicing that?
I mean, I think the thing with journaling is it shouldn't be something you're pressured to do, right? It shouldn't be a checklist that you feel compelled to do for the sake of doing it. And I think the reason that I started to create journals, frankly, was I wanted to be a journaler, right? I saw everyone talking about, journaling is so powerful. I was like, all right, let me journal. And then I would go out and buy journals. And I found, this was years ago, that they fit into one of two categories. One, it was a journal that was just, I felt more anxious thinking about having the journal than I did without the journal, right? It was like, all right, do this in the morning, write your to-do list, come back at night, keep yourself accountable, productivity, all this stuff. And I was like, man, I am anxious just thinking about what I have to do. It was too much. And then the other types of journals that I found were just, hey, how you feeling? Write down your thoughts, stream of consciousness. And while I do think that's a valuable format for someone like myself, a little ADD, I was like, I need some guidance. So I created a journal that was the mix of the two, a journal designed to take 10 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be done in the morning. It doesn't have to be done at night. It's not a checklist. It's not a productivity list. It's basically a check-in plus an in-depth question, a calibration plus an honesty required, no BS answer that you have to provide for yourself. And I found that mix of like prompted and unprompted really made me feel peaceful, but also energized to do it because I got value from it. So to answer your question, I think daily journaling is great. 10 minutes a day. If you can't carve out 10 minutes in your day, we should reevaluate where our priorities are. But it doesn't have to be done every day. Like if you're finding yourself struggling and you feel that you're not being honest with yourself, you're just writing what sounds good, take a day off, recalibrate, find a way to be inspired again and come back to it. But I do think a daily journaling habit in some form can be really, really, really helpful.
I'm going to definitely have to purchase your journal to help me, because I really want to get into the habit of at least trying to write once a week. As you said, I don't want to force myself to do anything because it's not going to be long-term or sustainable. Right now, I do have like an online journal that I use. I think it's called Pengu or something like that. But honestly, I journal on it like once every 3 months. But every 3 months when I do log in and I see my other notes, those notes are so valuable to me. I mean, it's like when I read them and I'm like, oh man, because you forget. But when you read it, you can kind of take your back to like, oh, I remember that day. I remember how I was feeling, my thought process, my events. And so it's imperative. I mean, I understand the value of journaling as frequently as possible. So I really need to do a much better job at that, because even if I journal once every 3 months, then those notes are so incredibly insightful. Even like 10 years from now, right? You get to take a look at all those notes, which is just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there's science to journaling too. The ability, the mind and body connection for one, is really powerful. It makes it real. And two, like I have a friend who's been journaling for a decade and he's got all his journals. The ability to look back at those things, I think, is really powerful. It could prove to yourself how much you've changed, which in fact proves how much you're capable of changing in the future, which I think is the antidote to a lot of us thinking that we're stuck in place and that our best days are behind us and all these different kinds of things. So yeah, I mean, I think, the power of journaling lies in the fact that, in a certain sense, we'd all agree that the purpose of life, one of the purposes of life, is to go out and just find answers. Find answers. Like that's our like we're a growing plant, and we're just trying to grow, and we're trying to find answers. But we forget that literally the only way to find answers is to ask yourself questions. And I think sometimes we forget that we're just going out and we're accruing experiences, which is great, and that's the lifeblood of ourselves. But we're not asking ourselves questions in the process. And journaling can provide questions, and more importantly, it can lead you to create your own questions, which I think is so powerful, and help you evolve the questions you're asking yourself as you grow older. I mean, the questions that you ask yourself when you're 20 are likely very different than the ones when you're 30. And I think it's just important to get yourself in a headspace where you're incentivized to ask yourself questions. You're not afraid of the answer. You're giving honest answers, not just answers that sound good, and then you're willing to act on the answers. Mindfulness without action it's good, don't get me wrong, but it's not great. You need to compound action with the honesty that you find in yourself, and that's the magic formula. And I think it's it's really gonna reduce regret in your life. It's gonna make you feel at peace. It's gonna do all the things we want, but don't necessarily know how to get. And I think journaling isn't a magic bullet, isn't a silver bullet, but it could be very helpful.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question. Are you happy?
I would definitely say so. Yes. I don't really like the word happy because what is happy? I think our definition of happy is very difficult to define. I think it could take a lifetime to figure out what happy is, because happy is a combination of many things. Happy it's kind of like ikigai, right? The idea of what you do, what you're called to, what you're paid for, what the world needs, like that. It's like happiness is a concoction of being fulfilled, being at peace, not being distracted, being honest, being forgiven, all these different kinds of things. So for me, it's like my goal in life really isn't to be happy, because I think that's setting yourself up as a human to be frustrated a lot, because happiness is something that you cannot control. You can try, but it is really at the whim of a lot of different things. So my goal, the one thing I can control though, is to be proud of myself. I could always be proud of myself, because pride is built on what you do, and hopefully the results follow. But no one can take the things that you do from you. Like, I can always be doing things that make me proud because I said I would do them, because I've connected some kind of hopeful goal to it that will make me fulfilled, confident, happy, so on and so forth. So my goal is to be proud of myself. And so in this moment, I'm proud of myself because I'm doing what I say I'll do. And as a result, I am happy, but that's not my goal necessarily.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's such an interesting question, right? Like, are you happy? That's such a complex question. But I like to reframe it as, like, am I grateful? Like, now I'm at a point in my life where I am extremely grateful. I'm grateful to have this conversation with you. I mean, I genuinely mean that. Like, I am so grateful for so many things. So I guess I'm happy. You know? And it's funny because many years ago, I always associated myself with, I'll be happy when I make X amount of money per month. I'll be happy when I do this. I'll be happy when I do this. When I started my company, like almost 10 years, or 8 years ago, this is our 9th year in. Every time I met those quote unquote goals that I promised myself I would be happy, it never happened. I mean, I was never happy. It's pure bullshit. So that I wasn't, I mean, my definition of happy was wrong. So I think it's very important for us to understand and define, like, what really is happiness. I'm so happy I have a wife. I'm so happy my parents are still alive. I'm so happy because I get to visit my parents. I mean, this is probably the happiest I'll ever be. Sometimes I think about that. It sounds kind of bad, but like, things are good. Like, I'm so grateful to be alive. I don't have any issues. And so I've really changed the way that I've looked at happiness. So, and I think it's for anyone who's struggling with that, perhaps to really think and redefine what being happy means, because you'll
Yeah.
notice that, hey, I mean, you have a lot of check marks and plus points going for your life, even if you don't, even if you think you don't, but you actually do.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I mean, I can relate to that big time. I mean, yeah, I think to be happy, you have to be somewhat contrarian. You have to push back against a lot of the pressure that we're under, namely to do certain things, have achieved certain things, to be on certain timelines. Because a lot of
Right.
that is, of course, real, but a lot of it has been borrowed, and we don't need it. We don't need it. Like, there's been a lot of research, of course, done about the idea of mimetic theory, mimetic desire, like the things that we want in life. Very few things are truly things that we have developed from zero to wanting. Like, we want them because we're mimicking that. It's something that we've been inspired to want through the example of other people. And of course, it's great to be inspired by other people and say, "Oh, I want that because I've observed that and it looks great." But very few of those things are truly things that we want. And the idea of mindfulness, the idea of journaling, the idea of radically honest introspection says that I'm going to sit down and truly figure out what makes me happy and
Right.
what I want. And that's very tough to do, of course. Like, how do you really draw a line between yourself and what you're mimicking and what you're borrowing? It's very difficult to do. I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
struggle with that a lot,
Yeah.
but I think it starts with realizing that a lot of the things that we've put on a checklist, a lot of the places where we've put finish lines of, at this point, I will be happy because I will have XYZ. The XYZ wasn't ours to begin with. It was something that we borrowed
Right.
because we said, oh, that person looks happy and they have the Lambo and the $1 million.
Yeah.
So that will make me happy. And, I'm not some
Yeah.
like overly spiritual guy who's like, oh, you don't need anything in life. Of course, I like nice things. I want nice things. I'm not going to be,
Right.
completely off kilter and say, just worldly desires are silly. But I think it behooves us immensely to challenge ourselves, to go thing by thing that we want, that we've attached importance to, and just question it in a good way. And if we come to the
Yeah.
same answer, then great. At least you've done your due diligence of challenging it. But I find a lot of people don't challenge it.
Right.
And then you're in your 50s and you're in your 60s and you're like, crap, you can't do anything about
Yeah. That's
the years that you quote wasted. So mindfulness
right.
again.
No, that's a very good point. By the way, huge congrats on your podcast. I know you're doing this for several years now. So I kind of want to talk about your podcast, New Mindset, Who Dis. By the way, I love the title of that as well. It's known for providing practical insights on self-improvement and mindfulness. I do love the description that, hey, like, you're not some guru, you're just a guy talking about his own. I really love that. But I want to talk about, so I know some of the episodes feature music with mindful commentary interspersed throughout. How'd you come up with the concept?
Yeah. So the short story is I've always loved dance music. I just always have. Dance music, techno,
Dance
house
music?
music,
Okay.
whatever genre you want to call it. I've always loved it. I've always just felt so happy. I think it's difficult to listen to house music and be dancing and not feel happy. So I always had that in the back of my head. And then as I started to do the podcast and I had a couple years under my belt, I always kept thinking, I was like, man, I really like to combine things that I'm passionate about. And then I also had the observation that I'm not very good at classic meditation. And a lot of meditation experts will tell me that's because I don't practice enough. And I agree. But I've always struggled with classic meditation. Again, to my point, I'm a little ADD. I'm a little impatient, right? It's tough for me just to sit down and do nothing. Then I was like, well, maybe that's not my toxic trait. Maybe I could leverage that in a good way. And I was like, there's got to be something said to active, energetic meditation where you're doing something. And eventually I came up with the concept of combining dance music with my mindfulness thoughts and call it a, guided dance music meditation, active meditation, something that you can listen to while you're walking, driving, working out, and still get the meditative aspect. Not in the traditional sense of calm and quiet mind, but in the opposite. Energized, peaceful mind, but energized, moving, sweating, heart rate up. The way that I finally kind of came up with the actual concept, because I've been circling that for a while, was just one day I was on my computer playing a clip of my podcast. I was trying to find something, and I also had Spotify playing, and I had too many tabs open, and they both played at the same time as I was trying to mute one. But it was at the perfect interlude in the song, where the song in dance music, it goes break, build, drop, right? So it was at the song where I was building and I was talking, and then it dropped and I stopped talking, and it was like perfect. I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Why not fill the interludes of these songs with some mindfulness? where on the other side of the mindfulness is boom, an explosion of energy. And that was kind of the beginning of the idea. And then I started teaming up with a lot of DJs and producers and folks who could lend their musical talents to the idea of mindfulness. And voila, now I get to combine something that I'm passionate about with something that I'm good at. And now it's opened up a lot of doors as far as being just kind of a unique, approachable way to be mindful.
I love that. Especially, I think I'm the same exact way, which is I can't do classical meditation. My co-founders love that calm, serene music, guided meditations. And I didn't realize that I've consistently practiced some version of mindfulness for a long time, which is similar to you because every morning when I wake up, it's a ritual. I love alternative rock music, similar to house. I love techno. These things that get you, amped up for the day. Every morning when I wake up, I listen to my favorite band. It's a lot of drums, electronic guitars, vocals, the opposite of what you would think calm is.
Yeah.
But it allows me to be calm. I don't know how to explain it. And in that session, when I listen to a lot of the music same time, day in and day out. Don't know why. It's addicting for some reason. But I have a lot of inner reflections, right? So when I wake up, when I listen to my music with my cup of coffee, like that whole routine is meditation for me. Music is blasting in my ears, which is a separate issue. I'm probably going to go deaf at one point, but it allows me to reflect. I reflect on what I did yesterday, what I'm going to do today, what my goals are for the future, what can I improve on, and not just, of course, personal life, business life, whatever it is. And I finally found out by having another guest on the show, which is, hey, I've been, this is still, it's meditation, it's mindfulness. You're practicing that. That's what works for you. So I kind of love that because a lot of people think meditation is like, slow, calm, boring. Which for people like us, maybe we need the opposite, which is.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. I mean, again, it comes back to the idea of like self-awareness without action. What's the point? And I have found that meditation that is active and energetic, it makes me want to do shit. It makes me want to do things, right? It makes me want to just go nuts.
Right.
And I think when you do it with, some reservation and some practicality, it's amazing. And again, that's not to bash on traditional meditation. It's so powerful. But I've just found that when I compare the two, one I'm not great at, and one just kind of makes me just here. The other one makes me honest, judgment-free, but it puts me here where it's like, all right, let's do this. Let me get up and send an email. Let me get up and write the first chapter to a book. Let me get up and call my friend. Let me get up and do that thing. So that again, I try to make mindfulness as practical as possible. And I think to incentivize people to practice mindfulness, give them results. And again, you shouldn't attach outcomes to mindfulness, certainly so. But you can, right? You can when you encourage someone to practice mindfulness, and their actions follow suit, and their actions bring goodness and change and reinvention into their life. They're going to continue to practice mindfulness. So the idea of music, we're going all the way back to square one. It helps with that, and it's just fun. It's a fun way. Like I think really what I'm passionate about as a non-licensed professional is bringing mindfulness into culture in different ways. And what's a more embedded part of culture than music? So if we're trying to bring more people into the mindfulness tent, do it through music. And I think it could change the world.
100%. Let me ask you something. Do you ever run out of ideas for quotes for your Post-it notes?
There is the question. Yes and no. I just hit episode 500 of the podcast. So I've done 500 episodes of the podcast. I've written thousands of quotes. I would say no, in the sense that life has a lot of perspective, a lot of flavors to offer. There's always something to slice and dice, certainly so. I'd say yes, in the sense of, sometimes I find myself saying the same thing, but then I realize that saying the same thing is not a bad thing. Because like nothing I say is earth-shattering. Nothing I say is like people are like, whoa, I've never thought of that. Anyone's reaction to my content is like, yeah, man, I knew that. I can't believe I've forgotten that, or I can't believe, I had swept it under the rug. Like you said it in a new way. You said it, and I heard it for the 50th time. 49 times didn't do it, but the 50th time did it. So I've just realized the stubbornness of humans. So for me to sit down and say the same thing, but in a slightly different way, with a different example, with a different, emphasis, it does the trick. So I don't think I'll ever truly run out of ideas. And as I get older, I mean, if you go back through my content, what I talked about in 2018 is different from 2023. So I think that's the gift of time, of perspective, of aging. So, talk to me in 5 more years and I'll probably be saying the same thing.
Yeah, that's actually a very important statement that you made that I think people should realize. Yeah, I don't know why, but as humans, we need to hear the same thing 100 different ways with the same message for us to get it or resonate. It'll be the 100th time or 50th time or 40th time. I mean, pick up any self-help book. Nothing is ever shattered. There is no groundbreaking advice that in fact, you probably know it. It's just that you need that reminder, or the way you said it today just jives with somebody and it hits for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, that's what I think. Like I used to be like, ooh, cliches. Like I don't want to be a guy who repeats cliches. But then I was like,
yeah,
but cliches are true. And why are we not running towards the truth? But let's dance it up in a different way. Let's put the cliche in a different context. Let's use a different example to drive the cliche home. And I think that's really helped open myself to expressing things in a different way that we all know are true. And helping people do that in their own life. Maybe it can lead them to say it in their own words. Maybe my words give them an idea, whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, we are stubborn. We need reminders. We need constant reminders. But sometimes you just need that one additional reminder to get you over the finish line, and it can change your life in a big way.
I want to talk a little bit about your book. That's bold of you. You encourage readers to embrace being too much. Can you explain that concept?
Yeah. So certainly there is a quality of being too much that is too much, right? You're full of yourself. You're truly too loud and you're disruptive. And it's annoying, right? We know that kind of person exists. The definition of too much that I am addressing is the too much that you've been told that you are when you're just being honest, when you're being open, when you're being vulnerable, when you have boundaries, when you have ambitions, when you have things that make you stand out, these things that are good because they're true to you, but someone came along in life and misunderstood it and said you're too much. You dated someone who didn't like your boundaries and said, oh, you're too difficult. Someone came along and said you're too quiet, right? These things that people misunderstood you, people applied their own lens on you, and there you are judging yourself because of what they said. Or social media has led you to think that, oh, there's something wrong with you because you want to do something different. You're too weird. Or you're, in your late 30s and you decided you want to do a career swap, right? Oh, you're falling behind, right? Labels. The idea of too much is insert any label there that we've given to ourselves unfairly, or that we've let someone else define us also unfairly. So it's basically a book to help us reinvent ourselves in the face of the labels that we've given ourselves, that we're afraid to unearth, that we're afraid to challenge. A lot of it is built around the idea of mimetic desire of why do we want anything? Where does self-comparison come from? Where does self-judgment come from? And basically encouraging people to be bold. Not bold in an annoying way, but I think it's a bold thing in life to say you could feel a certain way. Someone could tell you that you're a certain negative way, but it doesn't mean you are. And just encouraging people to practice mindfulness in the most practical form to help unearth what is true about you, what is good, what needs work, but what is true in the first place, so that we're not suffering based on our own unfair judgment, and we're not allowing other people to establish our identities for us.
I want to talk briefly about artificial intelligence, right? I think that's been a super, super hot buzzword, keyword, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, I bet for you too. Yeah, that's a topic and a half, I bet.
It is without a doubt disruptive to many industries. How do you think it's going to impact the creative industries? And what are your thoughts on incorporating some of these AI tools that are coming out in your own work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and there's no doubt that it's disruptive. I mean, just look at some of the, Mid-Journey and things like that are truly changing visuals, like super cool. It's changing writing too. I mean, I have a lot of writer friends who are very talented and very good writers, and they're using things like ChatGPT to help develop A to Z concepts for themselves. So I have no doubt that pretty much any creative industry will tap into these tools in various forms. I think some of the headlines are sensationalized as far as putting creatives out of work and this and that. I don't think, again, maybe I'm being a boomer here, but I don't think it'll ever replace some of the creative, individual practices that only a human can do. Like I've used Chat GPT here and there to say, okay, ChatGPT, give me an example of something that millennials are frustrated with dating, and then I'll use that as a reaction for a podcast, or I'll come up with a quote series around it. But it's only as good as the input on the ChatGPT side, so you have to be good at inputs, and I think that still requires a creative edge. But yeah, I don't know. I think the jury's still out for me. Sometimes I'm like, I hate it because it takes the humanity out of some of the writing. And like, I think for me, like writing about the human experience, to use artificial intelligence to write about the human experience seems a bit contradictory. So I don't know. Jury's out. I think when it comes to processes and writing habits and your ability to write and optimize your workflow and these boring process driven things, I think it could definitely be beneficial. I think in the long run, it'll be really curious to see how it can amplify true thought and true message that only humans are capable of knowing and relating to. But AI is a heck of a thing. So those are my thoughts as of this moment.
No, I love that take. And any person who's a good creative, if you're a great storyteller or a writer, you don't have to. I don't think you have to worry. It's, will the competition be harder? Yeah, probably. So instead of, so I'll give you an example, right? We employ 50 full-time people. The crazy thing, we use a lot of AI now to help us streamline our work, but some of these tools are just crazy. So, for example, instead of having 13 designers full-time on board, maybe we now only need 7. So if you run across all the industry, maybe it's not today, we're not there yet in terms of these tools being easily implemented across these big companies, or any companies for that matter. But eventually you're going to see, typically where a company would need, let's say, 5 CRM managers. Now they only need perhaps 3 or 2. So it's very scary, but it's also very exciting. We live in very exciting times. That's the way I like to look at it. But yeah, it's something very concerning. It scares me. Sometimes I don't sleep easy, while I sleep, but it's okay. That's exciting. It's new.
I mean, I've had a couple companies reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, Case, like, I've got this AI tool. Like, I could train it. And you just input 100 of your episodes. We'll train it up, and it can create episodes on its own using your voice, so you never have to do a thing." I'm like, "Damn, that's crazy."
Yeah.
But also,
right? But then your viewers would be like, "Case, screw you!" Like, right?
Yeah.
Would they actually Yeah, exactly.
How disingenuous would that be? So I don't know. I wrestle with it. I think it's cool. I'm on Twitter all day looking all the AI hardos do their thing. It's cool. It's inspiring. There's no doubt that it's inspiring, and I think it will undoubtedly impact industries. To your point, maybe it streamlines certain things. Maybe it requires less overhead. I don't know, but I think there's still room. There's always room for human ingenuity and the art behind the things that we do, even in the art and on the technology side. So, we'll see. Come back. Let's talk in a year, and I bet it's even crazier.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a very fine line in how much you can get away with using AI, because there's going to be a point where consumers are not just going to be okay with purchasing the products if it's like 80% engineered with AI. So there's definitely going to be a fine line. Case, just 2 last questions for you, and thank you so much for spending some time with me. It's been an absolute pleasure. For someone looking to start their self-improvement journey, what is one piece of advice you would give them today to help them stay committed and motivated?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I think changing the goal you set for yourself, like the way that we started the conversation, is like, I don't think you should set a goal for yourself to say, I want to be happy, and therefore I'm going to start XYZ wellness routine, right? I'm going to start journaling, so on and so forth. I think goals like I want to be happy, I want to be successful, I want to be confident, they're great goals, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they set you up in the long run to be incentivized to continue to try, to continue to pivot, to continue to be incentivized to do the thing. Again, I'm biased, but I really do think setting a goal for yourself, if I want to be proud of myself, it'll take care of all those things, because to be proud of yourself, you have to
Mm,
act. And action is what
right.
delivers
Right.
happiness, partnership, career success, confidence, all the things that you say you want. So I'm a big proponent of finding a way to define yourself with verbs instead of adjectives. I know it's a silly little thing, but it comes from habit
Mm,
formation communities. Like if you talk to James Clear or read any of his stuff, he's always talking about the way that you describe yourself is so important. And so for me, I
mm,
don't want to describe myself as a happy person, a successful person, a confident person. I describe myself as I'm the kind of person who XYZ verb. I'm the kind of person who does what he
mm,
says he's going to do. I'm the kind of person who answers his emails. I'm the kind of person who releases 2 episodes a week, whatever. Verbs,
yeah.
verbs that will deliver the adjective that I want. I think to answer your question, that is how you incentivize yourself to do the thing, to do the to do the thing. Define the kind of person you want to be with verbs that will deliver a lofty kind of ambiguous thing like happiness, and you're going to find yourself incentivized because you defined, oh, here are the verbs, here are the things I need to do that will deliver that thing. I need to do the things. And I think once you get in a headspace of doing, you're going to become addicted in a healthy way to the results, because you're going to have results. You can't think your way into happiness. You can't think your way into success. You can only verb your way there. And I think it starts with how you identify yourself and how you talk about yourself. I'm the kind of person who verbs, not I am a blank
Mm.
person. Verbs. I'm the kind of person who. So I'm very passionate about the idea of verbs, because I think mindfulness and action go hand in hand. They are intrinsically intertwined, and you need both of them. So that would be my answer.
That's such great advice. Thank you for that. That's actually a very insightful case. One last question for you, which is, who has been one of the most inspiring or strongest person or individuals in your life, and what lessons have you learned from them?
Ooh, lots. I mean, lots of, close friends, family. I don't know. This is kind of a non-answer, but like I get really inspired by just like the mass of the internet, like Reddit, for instance. I spend a lot of time on Reddit because Reddit
Okay.
is a site
Okay.
where it can be toxic. Don't get me wrong. Reddit has its own little nuances, but it's like Reddit is a community of regular people sharing regular experiences. And when I think of my life, of who are the people that inspired something in me that really changed my life for the better, no disrespect to the experts and the celebrities, but they didn't do it for me. It was a
Mm,
average regular person who wrote a post on um, uh, Reddit about how they were sad
yeah.
and they did something and it helped them and it inspired me. Like that is where I
Wow.
get inspired to change. Regular people, my friends, I have a tight knit, close group of friends who will send each other our journal entries. That is how I've changed. Not from reading the next best self help book, which is a contrarian statement because I'm going to put myself out of business with a statement like that. But like regular people are the people who have inspired me. And again, I love a good expert. I love someone who is trained and, academic. Love it. Thank you. But I've gotten so
Yeah.
much value from regular people because there's practicality to it. There's relatability to it. So I just
Yeah.
inspire people,
Yeah.
go out, buy books, buy my books. That's great. That's fantastic. But spend as much time as you can talking to regular people. Not that I'm not a regular person, but regular people, people who are right there alongside of you, who are learning and moving through these things. I was at a conference the other week in Hollywood about how Hollywood can bring together more directors and writers to help push mental health in entertainment. And I forget who it was on the panel. I think it was Charlemagne the God who said this. And he said that if you've lived through it, you've learned something. Simple statement, right? But we've all lived through a lot of things, regular people all day, and they've all learned something. Listen to those people. That is where you get the
Yeah.
real essence of change. Relatability and
Wow.
practicality, I think, is really the catalyst for change, more so than high level, big statements, creative wordplay. Just simple experiences from simple, regular people, I think it could really change your life. It's changed mine, to answer your question.
Honestly, that is not to rank the answers, which I don't typically do ever, but that's one of the best answers I've heard, and I have to completely agree with you. I mean, you are spot on, man. All right. Sorry. Last question. What are some of your favorite subreddits? I love Reddit. And you know what? You know what's funny? Whenever I Google something, my next action after Googling it is I get validation from Reddit. So then I'll put it in the
Yeah.
search and then I'll put Reddit because I want
Oh
to
yeah.
get the experiences of real people. And for anybody who's listening, stop Googling things or whatever you're going to put on Google, just put Reddit because those are
Dude.
far better answers. That's
So
literally what I
that's
do.
way better than AI. Yeah, literally.
It is.
Anything
It's
I
also
ever Google, I'll Google, how to fix a blown fuse in your house. Reddit, because you get
yeah.
someone who
Yep.
has nothing to sell you, someone who's not trying to sell you.
Exactly.
So, yeah. I mean, to answer your question, I mean, there's a bunch of mindfulness subreddits that are great. Zen Habits. There's a mindfulness
Okay.
one. I like to look at the men's issues and women's issues subreddits. They can both be toxic, but it's always interesting to see just complete focus, but from two different sides of the coin. So you can get a lot of perspective there. I also like the subreddits about like home repairs and stuff. Like
Okay.
you learn a
Okay.
lot of stuff there, how to change a tire, stuff like that. But yeah, Reddit's great.
Okay.
I'm
No,
glad the
fantastic.
answer
I'll tell you
resonated
mine.
with you.
Yeah, no, definitely. My favorite subreddit would be Watches Exchange. I love.
Oh,
I have an
cool.
unhealthy obsession with collecting watches.
Ooh.
Don't recommend it. But found some. I just whenever I go to sleep before I sleep, which is probably unhealthy, and I should not do that. I'm scrolling the subreddit, looking at all the different timepieces, and once in a while. I can't sleep because there's something that I really want that someone's looking to sell.
Yeah.
But anyway, Case, with that being said, thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure. Can you please let our audience know where can they best find you? Is it a website, social platforms? Please let us know.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Love chopping it up. I feel like we had a really good conversation. Yeah, it's case.kenny on Instagram. Everything is linked there. And then the podcast is called New Mindset Who Dis. So it's probably for the best that way. Let's keep it simple.
Awesome, Case. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.